The smell of rich food and expensive wine filled the air as she moved between tables, balancing 3 plates on her left arm. Her feet ached in the black shoes she'd polished that morning, shoes that had seen better days but still looked decent enough for The Sovereign, one of the fanciest restaurants in downtown Chicago. "Here's the roasted duck with cherry glaze," she said, setting down the first plate with practiced care. "And the sea bass for you, sir. Anything else I can get for you both?" The couple barely looked at her, too busy with their conversation about a vacation house in Maine. They waved her off with a quick, "No, thank you," and she moved on to her next table, tucking a loose strand of honey-brown hair behind her ear. This was the life of Mei Lin Chen, 28 years old, working double shifts that stretched from brunch service to late dinner, all to make rent on her tiny apartment and to pay off the student loans that hung around her neck like a stone. 5 years at music school, graduating with honors in piano performance, and where had it gotten her? Serving overpriced meals to people who thought Chopin was a type of wine. "Order up for table 12, called the head chef, his voice cutting through the gentle hum of conversation and the soft background music that played through hidden speakers. Mei Lin hurried to the kitchen, passing the new addition to the Sovereign that made her heart ache every time she saw it. A beautiful black baby grand piano that sat in the corner of the main dining room. The owner had installed it last month, planning to have live music 3 nights a week to enhance the dining experience. So far, they'd hired a rotation of music students from the local university, none of whom Mei Lin couldn't help but notice. Played with much soul. "You're doing a double again tomorrow?" asked Raj, another server who'd been at the Sovereign for nearly a decade. His kind eyes crinkled at the corners as he helped her load her tray. "Have to," Mei Lin answered, arranging the plates carefully. "Rent's due next week and I'm still short." Raj shook his head. "You work too hard." "When was the last time you had a day off?" She shrugged. "Can't remember. Maybe that day it snowed so bad they closed the restaurant? That was in February. It's May now." Mei Lin gave him a tired smile. "Well, there you go." The night wore on, her feet growing heavier with each hour. She served and cleared and smiled and nodded, all while mentally calculating tips and hours and bills. By 11:30, the dining room had emptied except for a few lingering couples enjoying after-dinner drinks. Mei Lin began her closing duties, wiping down tables and restocking napkins for tomorrow's service. As she worked, she found herself drifting toward the piano. It happened every night like a moth to flame. She couldn't help but be drawn to it. She glanced around to make sure no managers were watching, then quickly wiped her hands on her apron and sat down on the bench. She didn't touch the keys. She hadn't touched piano keys in 3 years. Not since that last audition, the one where the panel had told her she played beautifully but without distinction. "There are 1,000 pianists just like you," the head judge had said, not unkindly. "What makes you special?" She hadn't had an answer then. She didn't have one now. Instead, she just sat there, hands hovering above the keys like birds afraid to land. She imagined the feeling of cool ivory beneath her fingertips, the resistance of the keys as she pressed them down, the vibration of sound traveling up through her hands and into her body. "You play?" Mei Lin jumped up so quickly she banged her knee on the underside of the keyboard. "Mr. Patterson." The restaurant owner stood watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "No, I was just cleaning around it." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sat down." Mr. Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Funny because Raj mentioned you studied at the conservatory. Said you were quite good." Mei Lin made a mental note to kill Raj later. "That was a long time ago," she said, backing away from the piano like it might bite her. Mr. Patterson just nodded, then continued his rounds of the dining room. Mei Lin finished her shift at midnight, collected her meager tips and headed out into the cool spring night. The L train was nearly empty at this hour, just a few late-night workers like herself and some college kids heading home from bars. She leaned her head against the window, watching the city lights blur together as the train moved. 3 years. 3 years since she'd given up on music. 3 years of serving food and fake smiling and pretending. She didn't feel a physical ache every time she heard a piano on the radio or passed a music store or watched someone's fingers fly across keys in a movie. Her tiny apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building with no elevator. She trudged up the stairs, each step a small mountain after being on her feet for 14 hours. When she finally unlocked her door, she was greeted by darkness and silence. She didn't bother turning on more than one small lamp, The apartment was spare but clean. A futon that doubled as her bed. A small kitchen table with 2 chairs, though she never had visitors. A bookshelf filled with music books and scores she couldn't bring herself to throw away. And in the corner, covered with a sheet, the upright piano her grandmother had given her when she was 8 years old. She never played it. She kept it covered like a body, but she couldn't get rid of it either. Maylin dropped her bag and kicked off her shoes, then padded to the fridge and her socks. Empty except for half a carton of orange juice, some leftover rice, and a container of takeout soup from 3 days ago. She took out the soup and heated it in the microwave, then sat at her small table and ate it slowly, scrolling through her phone to check her bank account. The numbers weren't good. Even with the double shifts, she was barely keeping her head above water. Something would have to give soon. After eating, she took a quick shower, letting the hot water soothe her tired muscles. As she dried her hair, she caught sight of her hands in the mirror. They were servers' hands now, slightly raw from hot water and cleaning chemicals, a small burn on one finger from a hot plate. But they were still pianists' hands too, long fingers, strong joints, dexterous from years of training, hands that could still play if she let them. But what was the point? Where would it get her? More rejection? More disappointment? She had been good, yes, but not good enough. Not special enough. Not worth remembering. She turned away from the mirror. In bed, she scrolled through her phone one last time, checking her email out of habit. Among the spam and bills was a notification from a music blog she still followed. Applications open for Henderson. Grant for emerging artists. She clicked on it. Before she could stop herself, the Henderson. Grant $25,000 and a debut recital at Carnegie Hall. One of the most prestigious awards for young pianists who hadn't yet made it. The application required a video, performance submission, and recommendation letters. Lynn stared at the screen until her eyes burned, then closed the email without saving it. It wasn't for her. Not anymore. She set her alarm for 5:30 a.m., another double shift tomorrow, and tried to sleep. But her mind kept wandering back to the piano at the Sovereign, to the feel of the bench beneath her, to the phantom sensation of keys under her fingers. In her dreams that night, she wasn't serving food or counting tips. In her dreams, she was playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, her favorite piece, the one that had once made her teacher cry with its beauty. In her dreams, her fingers flew across the keys without hesitation, drawing sounds from the instrument that felt like they came from her very soul. She woke before her alarm, the ghost of music still lingering in her ears. For just a moment, in the gray light of dawn, she allowed herself to remember what it had felt like to love something so completely, to be so certain of her path. Then her alarm blared, and reality returned. She was just a waitress with calloused hands and fading dreams, a woman who served food to people who would never remember her face, a failed pianist who couldn't even bear to uncover the instrument in her own home. She got up, made coffee, put on her uniform, and headed back to the Sovereign for another day of the same. As she walked to the L station, she passed a street musician playing guitar, his case open for tips. She dropped in the loose change from her pocket, one artist supporting another even if she no longer considered herself part of that world. The musician nodded his thanks, and Maylene hurried on. But as she walked away, she found herself humming along to his melody, her fingers tapping out an accompanying rhythm against her leg without her even realizing it. Some things, it seemed, could not be forgotten, no matter how hard she tried. The restaurant was already bustling when she arrived. Maylene tied on her apron, grabbed her order pad, and stepped onto the floor with a practiced smile. Table 5 needed coffee refills. Table 7 was ready to order. Table 12 wanted to know about gluten-free options, and in the corner the baby grand piano sat waiting, its lid propped open like an invitation she couldn't accept. Not yet, anyway. 2 weeks passed, and the piano at the Sovereign continued to beckon Maylene like an old friend trying to reconnect. Each night after closing, she would find excuses to clean around it, polish its gleaming surface, or straighten the bench. Sometimes when she thought no one was watching, she would sit for just a moment, hands hovering above the keys but never touching them. Tuesday evening brought a thunderstorm that rattled the restaurant's large windows and kept most diners away. Maylene had only 3 tables all night, and by 9 o'clock the dining room was empty except for an older couple finishing their dessert. "Slow night," Raj said, leaning against the bar. Patterson's not happy about it. As if summoned by his name, Mr. Patterson emerged from his office, phone pressed to his ear. His face was pinched with annoyance. What do you mean he can't make it? The weather's not that bad. He listened for a moment, then sighed heavily. Fine, but this is the second time this month, Leo. He hung up and noticed Maylene and Raj watching him. Problem? Raj asked. Leo can't come into play tonight. Says the streets are flooded near his apartment. Patterson ran a hand through his thinning hair. We have a private party coming in at 10. Some big-shot lawyer's birthday. They specifically requested live music. Raj cleared his throat and glanced at Mei Lin. She shot him a warning look, but it was too late. Mei Lin plays, he said. She felt her face grow hot. Raj, don't, really? Patterson turned to her, eyebrows raised. You any good? I used to be, she admitted reluctantly. But I haven't played in years. Not seriously. She's being modest, Raj continued, ignoring her glare. She studied at the conservatory. Classical training. Patterson looked her up and down as if seeing her for the first time. The party starts in an hour. Can you play something appropriate for a corporate crowd? Nothing too experimental or avant-garde. Maylene's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know if I'll pay you extra, of course, Patterson added. $300 for the night, plus you can keep any tips from the party. $300. That would cover her electric bill and most of her groceries for the week. She glanced at the piano, feeling a mix of longing and terror. I don't have any music with me, she said weakly. Leo keeps some books in the bench. Standard cocktail stuff, some classical pieces, jazz standards. Patterson checked his watch. Look, I need to know now. Yes or no? Maylene took a deep breath. Yes, she heard herself say as if someone else was speaking through her. I'll do it, Patterson nodded briskly. Good. Finish up with your tables, then take 30 minutes to get ready. Raj will cover any new walk-ins. As he walked away, Maylene turned to Raj, who was grinning. I could kill you right now, she whispered. You'll thank me later, he replied, squeezing her shoulder. I've heard you humming while you work. You miss it. Anyone can see that. She did miss it. God, how she missed it. But what if she sat down at that piano and found that the music had left her? What if she embarrassed herself in front of a restaurant full of people? What if I can't do it? She asked softly. Raj's expression softened. Then you'll have tried. That's more than most people do with their dreams. The next hour passed in a blur. Maylene finished with her tables, then went to the employee bathroom to freshen up. She splashed water on her face and stared at her reflection. Her dark eyes looked scared. You can do this, she whispered to herself. It's just one night, just remember how it feels. She changed from her server's uniform into the spare black dress she kept in her locker for emergencies. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and appropriate. She let her hair down from its tight bun, allowing it to fall around her shoulders. When she emerged, the restaurant had transformed. The lights were dimmed, candles flickered on every table, and a reserved sign stood at the entrance. The first of the party guests were already arriving. Men and women in expensive suits and dresses, their laughter filling the space. Maylene made her way to the piano, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. She sat down on the bench and opened the lid covering the keys. The ivory gleamed in the low light, familiar and foreign all at once. She opened the bench and found Leo's music books. Flipping through them, she recognized most of the pieces. Chopin, Debussy, some jazz standards, even a book of simplified movie themes. She selected a few that she thought she could manage without much practice and arranged them on the stand. Her hands were trembling. She flexed them, trying to calm the tremors. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she'd performed for anyone. What if she'd forgotten how? Mr. Patterson caught her eye from across the room and nodded. It was time. Maylene placed her fingers on the keys, feeling their cool smoothness beneath her skin. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then before she could talk herself out of it, she began to play. She started with something simple, a Chopin nocturne she had once known by heart. The first few notes were hesitant, her fingers stiff and unsure. But then, like water finding its old path down a hillside, the music began to flow through her. She remembered this. Her body remembered this. The piece was melancholy and sweet, like a memory of someone loved and lost. As she played, Maylene felt something inside her chest begin to unlock, a door she had closed long ago, creaking open just a crack. When she finished the nocturne, There was a smattering of applause from some of the guests who had been listening. Maylene glanced up, surprised to find that several people had gathered near the piano. Drinks in hand, watching her with appreciation. Encouraged, she turned to a livelier piece, a jazz standard that Leo had marked as a crowd favorite. Her confidence grew with each note, her fingers becoming more fluid, more expressive. She added her own flourishes here and there, letting the music breathe through her interpretations. As she played, the years of doubt and disappointment seemed to fall away. She wasn't a failed pianist or a tired waitress in this moment. She was just Maylene, making music because it was what her hands were born to do. The party grew more animated as the night went on. People requested songs, some of which she knew and some she had to politely decline. A few guests placed tips in the small glass bowl Mr. Patterson had set on top of the piano. 20s and even a few 50s from the well-heeled crowd. During a short break, Raj brought her a glass of water. "You're amazing," he said, his eyes shining with something that looked like pride. "I knew you would be." Maylene took a sip of water, suddenly aware of how thirsty she was. "It feels strange, good strange, like finding something I thought I'd lost forever." "You never lost it," Raj replied. "You just put it away for a while." As midnight approached, the party showed no signs of winding down. Maylene's fingers were beginning to ache, unused to the workout after so long. But she didn't want to stop. Each piece she played seemed to unlock more memory, more emotion, more of the person she had once been. During a particularly soulful rendition of Clair de Lune, she noticed a woman standing directly beside the piano, watching her intently. She was in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into an elegant knot. Unlike the other guests who drifted in and out of attention to the music, this woman seemed to be studying Maylene with focused interest. When Maylene finished the piece, the woman approached. "That was beautifully played," she said. Her voice had a slight accent, French perhaps. "You have a wonderful touch." "Thank you," Maylene replied, suddenly shy. "Do you play here often?" the woman asked. Maylene laughed softly. "Actually, no. I'm usually serving the food, not providing the entertainment." The woman's eyebrows rose. "You're a waitress here?" "Yes, the regular pianist couldn't make it tonight because of the storm." "I see." The woman tilted her head, considering Maylene with new interest. "And where did you study?" "Your Debussy has a distinct conservatory approach, but with personal interpretation." "The Chicago Conservatory of Music," Maylene answered, surprised by the woman's perceptiveness. "I graduated a few years ago, and now you're waiting tables." It wasn't a question, nor was there judgment in her tone. Just a simple observation. Maylene nodded, unsure what else to say. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "My name is Vivienne Dupont. I'm the new director of community outreach for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra." Maylene accepted the card, reading the elegant script. "Nice to meet you." "We should talk," Vivienne said. "Not now, you have a party to entertain, but soon. I have an idea I'd like to discuss with you." She glanced at her watch. "I must go now, but please call me tomorrow." Before Maylene could respond, Vivienne melted back into the crowd. Maylene stared at the card in her hand, wondering what had just happened. The party continued until nearly 2 in the morning. By the time the last guest left, Maylene's fingers were cramping and her back ached from sitting so long, but she felt more alive than she had in years. Mr. Patterson counted out $300 in cash and handed it to her. Along with the tips from the bowl, nearly $500 more. "You were a hit," he said simply. "Leo plays the notes. You play the music. There's a difference." Maylene clutched the money, hardly believing the night had been real. "Thank you for giving me the chance." "Thank Raj," Patterson replied with a rare smile. "He was right about you." He paused. "Would you consider playing again? Maybe a regular night each week? We could work it around your serving schedule." Hope fluttered in Maylene's chest like a bird testing its wings. "I'd like that," she said. As she walked home that night, the rain had stopped. The streets glistened under the streetlights, and for the first time in 3 years, Maylene found herself planning what she would play tomorrow, not just how she would pay her bills. In her pocket was Vivienne Dupont's card, and with it, the possibility that the music she had buried might have a future after all. Maylene woke up the next morning with sore fingers and a strange lightness in her chest. For a moment she wondered if she had dreamed the previous night. The piano, the applause, the woman with the business card. But then she saw the money on her bedside table, and Vivienne Dupont's card propped against her lamp, and she knew it had been real. She picked up the card, running her thumb over the raised letters. Chicago Symphony Orchestra, Community Outreach Director, a phone number and email address. The possibility of something new. Mei-Lin glanced at the clock. It was nearly noon. She had slept later than she had in years, her body demanding rest after the emotional and physical exertion of the night before. She had the day off from the Sovereign, a rare luxury that now felt like perfect timing. She made herself a cup of coffee and sat at her small kitchen table staring at her phone. Should she call? What would she say? What could Vivienne Dupont possibly want from a waitress who hadn't seriously played piano in 3 years? Before she could talk herself out of it, Mei-Lin dialed the number. Vivienne Dupont speaking. Came the accented voice after 2 rings. Hi, this is Mei-Lin Chen, she said, her voice catching slightly. The pianist from the Sovereign last night. Mei-Lin. I'm so glad you called. Vivienne sounded genuinely pleased. I was hoping we could meet today if you're available. I have a proposition I'd like to discuss with you. Today? Mei-Lin looked down at her coffee-stained t-shirt and sweatpants. Yes, I could do that. Wonderful. There's a coffee shop called Allegro on Michigan Avenue, near the Cultural Center. Could you meet me there at 2 o'clock? I'll be there, Mei-Lin promised. After hanging up, she sat for a long moment wondering what she had just agreed to. Then she hurried to shower and change, pulling on the nicest outfit she owned, black pants and a blue blouse she usually saved for job interviews. She twisted her hair into a neat bun and even applied a little makeup, something she rarely bothered with for her waitressing shifts. Before leaving, Mei-Lin paused by the covered piano in the corner of her apartment. Slowly, she pulled off the sheet that had hidden it for so long. Dust motes danced in the sunlight as the old upright was revealed, a bit worn around the edges, but still the instrument her grandmother had taught her on, still the heart of who she used to be. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down, then recovered the piano. Not yet. But soon perhaps Allegro Coffee was busy when Mei-Lin arrived, filled with tourists and locals enjoying the spring afternoon. She spotted Vivienne at a corner table by the window, dressed elegantly in a simple gray dress, reading something on her tablet. Thank you for meeting me, Vivienne said as Mei-Lin sat down. She gestured to a cup already waiting. I took the liberty of ordering you a cappuccino. I hope that's all right. It's perfect, thank you. Mei-Lin wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to do with them. So, what's this proposition you mentioned? Vivienne set her tablet aside and leaned forward slightly. I'll get straight to the point. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra recently received a grant to expand our community outreach programs. One of our new initiatives is called Music for All. We're establishing free music education centers in underserved neighborhoods throughout the city. Mei-Lin nodded, not sure where this was going, but interested. Nonetheless, we need talented musicians who can teach piano to children and adults who otherwise would never have access to music education. Vivienne's eyes were keen as she studied Mei-Lin. Based on what I heard last night, you have both the technical skill and the emotional sensitivity that makes for an excellent teacher. Me? Mei-Lin blinked in surprise. But I'm not a teacher. I've never taught anyone. Did someone teach you? My grandmother at first, then private lessons, then the conservatory. And what did those teachers give you besides technique? Mei-Lin thought about it. A way to express things I couldn't say with words. A place to put feelings that were too big for me. A connection to something timeless. Vivienne smiled, clearly pleased with this answer. Exactly. That's what makes a good teacher, understanding what music can be for another person. She took a sip of her coffee. The position would start part-time 2 days a week. The pay is modest but fair, $40 an hour with potential for more hours as the program grows. Mei-Lin did the math quickly in her head. Even just 2 days a week would nearly equal what she made in tips at the Sovereign, and it would be doing something she loved. There's more, Vivienne continued. We also need performers for our community concert series. These are informal performances in libraries, parks, community centers, places where people might never have heard live classical music before. These performances pay an additional stipend. The idea of performing again, not just one night in a restaurant, but regularly as part of her life, made Mei Lin's heart beat faster. But doubt crept in too. I haven't played seriously in 3 years, she admitted. Last night was the first time I've performed for anyone since I left school. I'm rusty, out of practice. Vivian waved this concern away. That can be remedied with time and work. What can't be taught is the way you play. Like you're having a conversation with the composer, not just reproducing notes on a page. She leaned back in her chair. Tell me, why did you stop playing? The question hit Mei Lin like a stone dropping into still water. No one had asked her that directly before. Most people in her life now didn't even know she had been a pianist. I wasn't good enough, she said finally, the words bitter in her mouth. I auditioned for everything. Orchestras, competitions, teaching positions at good schools. I always made it to the final rounds but never got selected. One judge told me I was technically proficient but forgettable. After a while, it just hurt too much to keep trying. And now? After last night? Mei Lin looked out the window, watching people pass by on the busy street. Now I remember how it feels to play, how it feels to be whole. Vivian nodded as if Mei Lin had just confirmed something she already knew. Our first community center opens in Bronzeville in 2 weeks. We need teachers to begin student assessments and placements. She slid a folder across the table. Here's information about the program, the teaching schedule, and the contract details. Take some time to think about it. Mei Lin opened the folder and scanned the first page. The community center was in a neighborhood she knew well. She had grown up not far from there in an apartment not much bigger than the one she lived in now. She thought about what it would have meant to her as a child to have access to music lessons, to touch a real piano, to learn how to make beauty with her own hands. I don't need time, she said, looking up at Vivian. I want to do this. Vivian's face broke into a warm smile. I was hoping you'd say that. She pulled out another document from her bag. Then there's one more thing I'd like you to consider. It was an application for the Henderson Fellowship, a year-long program for musicians focused on community engagement and performance. It included a stipend of $30,000, professional development workshops, and a solo recital at the end of the year. The application deadline is next Friday, Vivian said. I sit on the selection committee and I'd like to nominate you. You would need to submit a video of your playing and a personal statement. Mei Lin stared at the application, remembering the email she had deleted just weeks ago about a similar opportunity. I don't have any recent recordings. Then make one, Vivian said simply. Play something that matters to you. Something that shows who you are as a musician. The idea terrified and thrilled Mei Lin in equal measure. What if I'm not ready? What if I'm still forgettable? Vivian reached across the table and touched Mei Lin's hand lightly. My dear, what I heard last night was many things, but forgettable was not one of them. You've spent years believing what one judge told you. Perhaps it's time to consider another perspective. They talked for another hour, Vivian explaining more about the teaching position and the fellowship. By the time they parted, Mei Lin had signed a preliminary contract to begin teaching in 2 weeks and had promised to submit a fellowship application. As she rode the L train back to her apartment, Mei Lin felt like she was moving through a dream. Yesterday she had been a waitress with buried dreams and mounting bills. Today she was a piano teacher with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's community program and a potential fellowship candidate. When she got home, she went straight to the covered piano in the corner. This time she didn't just pull off the sheet. She folded it neatly and put it away in a drawer. She opened the lid and sat down on the bench, wincing at how badly out of tune the instrument was after years of neglect. That would need to be fixed immediately. Even with the sour notes she began to play, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. She played scales and arpeggios, reacquainting her fingers with patterns they had once known as well as breathing. She played snippets of pieces she had once performed, surprised at how much her muscle memory retained. And then, as the afternoon light faded into evening, she began to play the piece she would record for her application, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the piece that had made her fall in love with piano in the first place. She couldn't play the orchestral parts, of course, but the piano solos were what mattered, those soaring, achingly beautiful passages that seemed to contain every human emotion at once. She played until her fingers cramped and her back ached. Then she played some more. She played through mistakes and memory lapses, reminding herself that this was just practice, just the beginning of coming back to herself. When she finally stopped, the apartment was dark except for the streetlight filtering through her window. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from the Sovereign, probably asking if she could cover someone's shift. For the first time in years, she didn't immediately call back. Instead, she made a list of what she needed to do: get the piano tuned, practice daily, record her application video, prepare teaching materials. There would still be waitressing shifts. She couldn't afford to quit completely, at least not yet. But now the Sovereign was no longer her only path forward. Now there was music again. Real music, not just echoes and memories. Maylin went to bed that night with sore hands and a full heart. Before falling asleep, she set her alarm for early morning. She had practicing to do. The piano tuner arrived at Maylin's apartment exactly at 9 a.m. A cheerful older gentleman with calloused hands and a case full of tools she didn't recognize. "Haven't been played in a while, has she?" he asked, running his fingers over the dusty keys of her grandmother's piano. 3 years, Maylin admitted. "I should have kept it maintained even when I wasn't playing." The tuner, whose name tag read Lou, clicked his tongue sympathetically. "Instruments are like people. They need attention and care or they start to lose their voice." He pressed a key, wincing at the sour note. "This old girl has a lot to say, though. She just needs a little help saying it." For the next 2 hours, Maylin watched in fascination as Lou worked his magic on the neglected piano. He explained each step as he went, showing her how to identify problems she could fix herself in the future. By the time he packed up his tools, the piano sang again, its voice clear and true. "Thank you," Maylin said, handing him the money she'd earned from her night of playing at the Sovereign. It seemed fitting somehow, using those earnings to bring her own piano back to life. "Don't be a stranger to her now," Lou said, patting the piano's wooden top affectionately. "She's missed you." After he left, Maylin sat at the bench and played a C major scale, marveling at how different it sounded on her newly tuned instrument. The notes rang out in her small apartment, filling the space with sound that had been absent for too long. She had taken 2 weeks of leave from the Sovereign, using her accumulated vacation days to prepare for her new teaching position and to record her fellowship application. Mr. Patterson had been surprisingly understanding, especially after she agreed to continue playing at the restaurant 1 night a week. Now, with her piano restored, she established a rigorous practice schedule for herself, 6 hours a day minimum, divided between technique drills, the Rachmaninoff for her application recording, and preparation for her teaching duties. The first few days were physically painful. Her fingers, wrists, and back protested the sudden increase in use. She soaked her hands in warm water each night and stretched her arms and shoulders every morning. Slowly, her body remembered how to be a pianist's body again. A week into her practice schedule, Maylin's phone rang. It was Raj from the Sovereign. "How's the piano boot camp going?" he asked when she answered. "Brutal," she replied with a laugh. "But good. Really good. We miss you around here. The new guy keeps mixing up orders and can't remember which customers are allergic to shellfish." "I'll be back next week," she assured him. "Just for a few shifts, though." There was a pause on the line. "That's actually why I'm calling. Patterson wants to know if you'd consider picking up some extra shifts. The private party you played for was so impressed they want to book the restaurant again, but only if you're playing." Maylin's stomach tightened. "When?" "This Saturday. I know it's short notice." She glanced at her practice schedule taped to the wall above her piano. Saturday was supposed to be devoted entirely to recording her fellowship application. The deadline was Monday. "I can't, Raj, I'm sorry. I have this application due and I still don't feel ready to record it." "They're offering double the usual rate," Raj said, "and Patterson said he'd throw in a bonus for you." The money was tempting. So tempting. Her rent was due soon, and even with the advances from her new teaching position, things would be tight for a while. But if she got the fellowship, "I'm sorry," she repeated more firmly. "I need to focus on this application. It's important." After hanging up, Maylin sat at her piano wondering if she'd made a mistake. The practical part of her, the part that had been scraping by for years, screamed that turning down good money was foolish. But another part, a part that was growing stronger each day, knew she had made the right choice. She played for another 4 hours, working through the most challenging sections of the Rachmaninoff concerto. By evening, her shoulders ached and her fingers felt like they might fall off. But she had conquered a particularly difficult passage that had been giving her trouble for days. Small victory, she thought. but it felt huge. The next day, Mei Lin took a break from practicing to visit the community center in Bronzeville, where she would be teaching. The building was old but recently renovated, with bright murals on the exterior walls depicting the neighborhood's rich cultural history. Inside, workers were putting final touches on the music room, installing soundproofing panels, arranging chairs, and most importantly, delivering a gleaming upright piano. "You must be Mei Lin," called a voice from the doorway. A tall woman with close-cropped gray hair and a clipboard approached, hand extended. "I'm Dr. Torres, the center director." Mei Lin shook her hand, immediately warming to the woman's friendly demeanor. "Yes, it's nice to meet you. I just wanted to see the space before classes start next week." Dr. Torres nodded approvingly. "Good idea. Gets the creative juices flowing when you can visualize where you'll be working." She gestured around the room. "We've already got 12 students signed up for piano lessons, ages 7 to 70. 70? Mei Lin echoed, surprised. "Mrs. Washington," Dr. Torres confirmed with a smile. "She's lived in this neighborhood for 50 years and always wanted to learn piano. Says she's finally got the time now." The thought of teaching someone who had waited a lifetime to learn music touched something deep in Mei Lin. "I can't wait to meet her, to meet all of them." "They're lucky to have you," Dr. Torres said. "Vivian speaks very highly of your abilities." Mei Lin felt a flutter of nervousness. "I hope I can live up to that." "You will." Dr. Torres checked something off on her clipboard. "Now, would you like to try out the piano? Make sure it meets your standards for teaching." Mei Lin sat at the new instrument, testing its action and sound. It was a decent piano, not concert quality, but more than adequate for lessons. She played a brief excerpt from a Mozart sonata, letting the music fill the room. When she finished, she noticed Dr. Torres watching her with an expression of quiet appreciation. "That's why you'll be fine," the older woman said. "Anyone who plays like that understands what music really is. And that's what these kids need to learn, not just where to put their fingers." Mei Lin left the community center feeling lighter, more certain of her path. She stopped at a small grocery store on her way home, treating herself to fresh vegetables and a bottle of inexpensive wine to celebrate this new chapter in her life. Back at her apartment, she practiced for another 3 hours, then set up her phone on a makeshift tripod constructed from books stacked on a chair. It wasn't professional recording equipment, but it would have to do for her application video. She changed into a simple black dress she had worn for conservatory recitals years ago, surprised to find it still fit perfectly. She pinned her hair back neatly, applied minimal makeup, and faced the camera. The first take was a disaster. She fumbled notes she had played perfectly just hours before, distracted by the red recording light and the knowledge that this performance could determine her future. The second take was better, but still not what she wanted. She stopped halfway through, frustrated with herself. On the third attempt, just as she was about to begin playing, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Raj. "Whatever you're working on right now, you're going to be amazing at it. The whole staff believes in you." Mei Lin smiled, set the phone to Do Not Disturb, and started the recording again. This time, she didn't think about the fellowship or the judges who would watch this video. She didn't worry about wrong notes or technical perfection. Instead, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a child learning on her grandmother's piano, to a conservatory student full of dreams, to a waitress hiding from failure, and now to a woman reclaiming her voice. She played the Rachmaninoff as if telling that story through Rachmaninoff's notes. The melancholy opening theme spoke of loss and resignation. The building intensity reflected struggle and persistence, and the triumphant finale sang of possibility and rebirth. When she finished, she sat motionless at the piano for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. They weren't tears of sadness or even relief, but of recognition. She had found something she thought was lost forever. She reviewed the recording, noting a few small technical errors, but pleased with the emotional truth of her performance. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was her. That night, Mei Lin completed her application for the Henderson Fellowship. She wrote her personal statement with the same honesty she had played with, describing both her failures and her hopes without shame or embellishment. She attached her recording and submitted everything with a silent prayer to whatever forces had brought Vivienne Dupont to the Sovereign on that stormy night. Then she slept deeply for the first time in weeks, her body and mind exhausted but at peace. The next morning brought a new kind of nervousness, In just 3 days, she would teach her first piano lesson at the community center. She had prepared diligently, creating lesson plans for students of different ages and abilities, but she still felt unprepared. What if she couldn't communicate what she knew? What if she couldn't connect with her students? To calm her nerves, she visited the Sovereign, where Raj greeted her with a hug. There she is, our famous pianist. Hardly famous, Mei Lin laughed, though it felt good to be described as a pianist first, not a waitress. You missed the party Saturday night, Raj said as they sat at the bar during his break. They had to hire some college kid to play. He was technically good but boring as dry toast. I'm sorry I couldn't help, she said. Raj waved away her apology. Don't be. Patterson told me about your new teaching job. And the fellowship thing. I'm proud of you. His simple words meant more to Mei Lin than he could know. Thank you. For everything. If you hadn't told Patterson I could play that night, you would have found your way back to it eventually, Raj said confidently. Some things are just meant to be. As Mei Lin walked home from the Sovereign, she thought about Raj's words. She had never been one to believe in fate or destiny. Hard work and talent were what mattered in music. Not mystical forces guiding one's path, but still. The timing of that storm, the regular pianist's absence, Vivienne Dupont happening to be in the audience that particular night. It did seem like more than mere coincidence. Maybe, she thought as she unlocked her apartment door, it wasn't about fate or luck. Maybe it was simply about being ready when opportunity appeared. And after 3 years of hiding from her dreams, she was finally ready to step into them again. 6 months passed in a blur of lessons, practice, and performances. Mei Lin's life had transformed so completely that sometimes she had to remind herself that half a year ago, she had been just a waitress with buried dreams. Now, as she arranged chairs in the community center's music room for tonight's student recital, she could hardly believe how much had changed. The Henderson Fellowship had come through. She remembered the day the email arrived, how her hands had trembled so badly she could barely click to open it. We are pleased to inform you. The words had blurred through her tears. The stipend had allowed her to cut back to just 1 shift a week at the Sovereign, giving her more time to teach and play. Need any help with those? Dr. Torres asked, poking her head into the room. I think I've got it, Mei Lin replied, stepping back to survey her work. 5 rows of chairs faced the piano, enough to seat all her students' families. A small table by the door held programs she had printed herself, listing each student and their piece for the night. Nervous? Dr. Torres asked with a knowing smile. More than when I play myself, Mei Lin admitted. I feel responsible for how they do. That's how you know you're a real teacher. Dr. Torres squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. But they're ready. You've prepared them well. Over the past months, Mei Lin had grown from 12 students to 20. With a waiting list forming as word spread about the patient, passionate piano teacher at the Bronzeville Community Center. She taught 3 days a week now, working with everyone from 7-year-old beginners to retirees fulfilling lifelong dreams. Her favorite student remained Mrs. Washington, the 70-year-old who had never touched a piano before their first lesson. Despite arthritis in her fingers and initial frustration with reading music, Mrs. Washington practiced faithfully every day on the keyboard Mei Lin had helped her select. Tonight, she would play a simple but beautiful arrangement of Amazing Grace that never failed to bring tears to Mei Lin's eyes during their lessons. As Mei Lin made final adjustments to the piano bench, her phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. Can't wait for tonight's recital, bringing a surprise guest. Don't worry, it's a good surprise. Mei Lin smiled, though her stomach fluttered with curiosity and a touch of anxiety. In the months since their first meeting, Vivian had become both mentor and friend, guiding Mei Lin through the fellowship program and introducing her to key people in Chicago's music community. By 6 o'clock, families began arriving, parents, grandparents, siblings, all dressed in their best clothes and carrying flowers or small gifts for the performers. Mei Lin greeted each group warmly, directing them to seats and reassuring nervous children. Mrs. Washington arrived with what appeared to be her entire extended family. Children, grandchildren, even a few great-grandchildren, all beaming with pride. Teacher, Mrs. Washington said, taking Mei Lin's hands in her gnarled ones. I practiced until midnight. My son said I need to sleep, but I told him, music doesn't wait for sleep. Mei Lin laughed. Just remember to breathe during the middle section like we practiced. He'll be wonderful. As the room filled, Mei Lin spotted Vivian entering with an elegant older man she didn't recognize. They sat in the back row, Vivian giving Mei Lin a small wave and encouraging nod. At 6:30 sharp, Mei Lin stepped to the center of the room. The excited chatter died down as she welcomed everyone to the first recital of the Bronzeville Community Center's piano program. "Tonight is about celebration," she said, looking around at the faces of her students, young and old, all of them having worked so hard. "We celebrate the courage it takes to learn something new. We celebrate the discipline of practice. Most of all, we celebrate the joy of making music, whether you've been playing for 6 months or 60 years. She introduced the first student, a shy 8-year-old boy who had struggled with stage fright during rehearsals. He approached the piano hesitantly, but when he began to play his simple piece, a folk song Mei Lin had arranged especially for him, his face relaxed into concentration. When he finished with only one small mistake, the applause was thunderous, his parents leaping to their feet with proud shouts. One by one, the students performed. Some played with technical precision, others with raw emotion. A few made mistakes and recovered beautifully, just as Mei Lin had taught them. Each performance, regardless of difficulty or execution, was met with genuine appreciation. When it was Mrs. Washington's turn, the elderly woman rose slowly from her chair, assisted by her son. She made her way to the piano with dignity, adjusted her glasses, and nodded to Mei Lin that she was ready. The first notes of Amazing Grace filled the room, played with a weathered touch that somehow made the simple melody more poignant. Mrs. Washington didn't look at the keys as she played. She had memorized the piece despite Mei Lin telling her she could use the sheet music. Instead, she looked straight ahead, her eyes bright with the fulfillment of a dream deferred too long. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The audience stood as one, applauding not just for her performance but for her perseverance, for the demonstration that it's never too late to pursue joy. After the final student performed, Mei Lin announced a short intermission before the second half of the program. Families mingled, congratulating each other's children, enjoying the cookies and punch provided by Dr. Torres. Vivian made her way to Mei Lin, the unknown man following behind her. "That was beautiful," Vivian said, embracing Mei Lin warmly. "You've built something special here." "Thank you," Mei Lin replied, flushed with pride and the lingering emotion of Mrs. Washington's performance. "It's the best thing I've ever done." Vivian turned to her companion. "I'd like you to meet someone. This is Thomas Harrington." Mei Lin's eyes widened with recognition. Thomas Harrington was one of the most respected piano pedagogues in the country, author of several definitive texts on teaching methods, and director of the piano department at the Chicago Conservatory, her alma mater. "Professor Harrington," she said, suddenly feeling like a student again. "It's an honor to meet you." "The honor is mine," he replied, his voice gentle but authoritative. "Vivian has told me about your work here, but seeing it firsthand," he gestured to the room full of students and families. "This is music education at its most meaningful." Before Mei Lin could respond, Vivian added, "Thomas isn't just here as an observer." "Tell her, Thomas," the professor smiled. "Our department is expanding its community engagement programs. We need someone to coordinate these efforts and teach in our preparatory division. Someone who understands both the artistic and human sides of music education." He held Mei Lin's gaze steadily. "We'd like that person to be you." Mei Lin blinked, certain she had misheard. "Me? But I've only been teaching for 6 months. And in that time, you've built a thriving program from nothing," Thomas said. "Your students play with heart, not just technique. That can't be taught, it has to be shown." He handed her a folder. "The position details are all in here. It's part-time to start, with the possibility of becoming full-time. You could continue your work here while also teaching at the conservatory." Mei Lin took the folder with numb fingers, unable to process what was happening. To teach at her alma mater, the same institution that had trained her, but hadn't deemed her special enough to recommend for performance opportunities. It was almost too much to comprehend. "Think about it," Vivian said gently. Seeing Mei Lin's overwhelmed expression, no rush to decide. After they rejoined the crowd, Mei Lin excused herself to the small office adjacent to the music room. She needed a moment alone before the second half of the program, Sitting at the desk, she opened the folder and quickly scanned its contents. The position was real. The salary was modest but fair, and the opportunity was beyond anything she could have imagined 6 months ago. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Raj, holding a bouquet of yellow roses. "Hey, piano lady," he said with a grin. "Hope I'm not too late for the show." "Raj." She jumped up to hug him. "You came." "Wouldn't miss it." Patterson wanted to come too, but someone had to run the restaurant. He handed her the flowers. "These are from all of us at the Sovereign. We're proud of you." Maylin buried her face in the roses, touched by the gesture from her former co-workers. "Thanks for believing in me before I believed in myself." Raj shrugged. "I just pointed out what was already there." He nodded toward the folder on the desk. "Good news?" "Amazing news. A teaching position at the conservatory." "I never thought I did," Raj said simply. "From that first night you played for us. Some people are meant to make music. Some are meant to share it with others. You're both." Tears pricked Maylin's eyes. "I still don't know if I'm good enough." "Look out there," Raj said, gesturing toward the music room where her students and their families waited. "That's your answer." Maylin took a deep breath and nodded. It was time for the second half of the program. Her solo performance, part of her fellowship requirements. She returned to the music room, now quieting again as people retook their seats. Stepping to the center, she thanked everyone for coming and explained that she would be performing a piece that held special meaning for her. "This is Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, she said. "It's normally played with an orchestra, but tonight I'll perform just the piano part. This piece has been with me through different chapters of my life. As a student, during the years I stopped playing, and now as I find my way back to music." She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and took a moment to center herself. In the audience sat her students, her mentors, her friends, and now, perhaps most importantly, her future. All these lives connected through invisible threads of music, chance encounters, and choices both big and small. When she began to play, the room disappeared. There was only the music, soaring, passionate, filled with longing and hope. Her fingers found each note with certainty. Her body swayed with the emotional current of the piece. This was not a technically perfect performance, but it was an honest one. It was the story of her journey told through Rachmaninoff's notes. In the front row, Mrs. Washington watched with shining eyes, perhaps seeing her younger self in Maylin. In the back, Professor Harrington leaned forward slightly, his expression thoughtful and appreciative. And scattered throughout the room, 20 students witnessed their teacher transform from instructor to artist before their eyes. As Maylin played the final triumphant chords, she felt something settle into place within her, a sense of rightness, of having found exactly where she belonged. Not on the world's great stages as she had once dreamed, but here in this humble community center, building bridges between people and music they might never have discovered otherwise. The applause washed over her like a wave. She stood and bowed, then gestured to her students to join her at the front of the room. They gathered around her, faces glowing with pride and possibility. "These are the real stars tonight," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for letting me be part of your musical journeys." Later, as she helped clean up the empty room, Maylin's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of her playing the piano at the Sovereign that stormy night 6 months ago, taken by someone in the audience. Beneath it was a simple message. Sometimes the most important performances happen when we least expect them. Maylin smiled and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Tomorrow she would call Professor Harrington and accept his offer. She would continue teaching at the community center. She would play her weekly set at the Sovereign where it all began. And sometime soon she would finally remove the word waitress from how she described herself. She was Maylin Chen, pianist and teacher. And her life's most important performance was just beginning.